Hey, what's up everyone? So today, I want to talk about a little subject that's on my mind. Alright, thought I'd weigh in on the whole Uighur situation, however the fuck you pronounce it, alright? So, I just want to say first and foremost, I have done no research into this topic, and I don't plan on doing any research into this topic. I don't really plan on talking about this topic, because to be frank with you guys, I really don't give a quarter of a fuck, alright? And let me explain why. So, I'm sure China is doing religious or political repression. I'm sure they're doing human rights violations. It wouldn't surprise me. None of that, I wouldn't put it past the Chinese government, is what I'm trying to say. But with that being said, what I'm concerned about is not the Uighur, quote, genocide, even though it's not even classified as a genocide by the United Nations Human Rights Panel. But sure, for the sake of the narrative, let's call it that, because that's what actually matters here, alright? It's not the fact that whether or not there is a genocide going on in Uighurstan. What matters is the narrative and what it serves. So, the United States. Let's talk a little bit about the United States. This is a country that lied its way into the Iraq War, lied its way into the Afghanistan War, lied its way into the Vietnam War. It lied its way into a bunch of these wars, got into all these conflicts for all this military adventurism, spilling all this blood, wasting all these resources, killing all these people. And for what? So that the profits of Big Pharma can go up, the military-industrial complex, as well as the war hawks up in Washington, all right? Because these are the people that really benefit, as well as the mainstream demagogues that are on their payrolls, the mainstream demagogues that are having their pockets lined and their checks signed by these ultra-wealthy motherfuckers that benefit from these wars. No one cares about that, right? No one cares about the insurmountable amounts of blood that this country has spilled, the human rights atrocities that we have committed or have backed, like the genocide in Yemen or the fascist apartheid state of Israel. No one cares about that. And when they do pretend like they care, it's just so they can attack the Republicans. It's just so they can do the bad cop routine and say, orange man bad, orange man bad, the Republicans are doing all these terrible things. That's when the liberals will talk and speak up about it. Only when it's convenient for them and their little political agenda, you know, because it's all about maintaining this illusion, this facade, this spectacle that we have a choice. And we, the Democrats, we don't commit atrocities and human rights abuses. We're the respectable. We're pragmatic. We're politically correct. We let LGBT people bomb third worlders to death with our drones, you know? It's very funny to me how that dynamic works. It's a lot like the good cop, bad cop routine. Like, they'll bitch about the Republicans, they'll bitch about Orange Man bad, how bad Donald Trump is, and then the microsecond Biden gets elected, he continues like all of the same fucking policies. And then the mainstream media sews its mouth shut right afterwards. You know, I don't hear a fucking tear being shed about that shit, but then all of a sudden, oh, the Uyghurs. None of you people even knew who the Uyghurs were until 15 minutes ago. And America, it is very beneficial that people talk about it. It's beneficial that a narrative get pushed, because it's yet another thing that there's not a lot of information on, a lot of unbiased, objective information on that's out there, that the US government can use as a tool to push an agenda, an anti-China agenda. Like, that's what I'm really concerned about here, is the agenda. Because what it does is it manufactures consent for anti-China sentiments, for a potential Cold War, or even armed conflict with the PRC, because, let's be honest, they are now a rival superpower. They are a rival to US hegemony around the world. They are on the path to becoming the world's #1 superpower, and we don't like that. And America, because of its military-industrial complex, as well as the petrodollar, practically can't exist outside the context of a Cold War. I mean, I suppose we could give up our military, our big bloated military, like the colonial powers have done historically. However, our MIC, it doesn't gonna like that. They ain't gonna like that one bit. So, they're gonna do everything in their power to lie about these conflicts, lie about these situations, and concern troll for human rights in these nations, when really America, for one, America's not one to talk about human rights. You know, jamming children into concentration camps and giving indigenous women at the border forced sterilizations. This nation guilty of shit like that, or the fucking fascist dictators and human rights violations we've backed on our own end, you know. So this nation, with all of its power and all of its clout, does not give a quarter of a fuck about human rights. It's about it serving an agenda. It's about manufacturing consent for another arms race, for another war, because it makes the military-industrial complex happy. That's what it's about. And that's what I'm trying to say here in this little low-effort vertical cam video, is that's ultimately what matters at the end of the day. You know, I always find it funny. I find it funny how liberals will criticize the U.S. for its actions such as the Iraq War, or the toppling of the USSR, or the toppling of Gaddafi, and the fallout and the millions of people that have died in the wake of that, and the immiseration of countless millions of people after that, you know. But if you go back in time, before these events even transpired, these very same liberals would have been on the side of regime change. These very same liberals would have been on the fucking side of the US State Department regurgitating the same talking points that we were repeating about Gaddafi and all these other nations as well, all right? But no, this time it'll be different, right? If we manufacture regime change for China, if we destabilize China, and we get countless innocent people destroyed in the process, you know? But that's okay. But all these liberals that are concern trolling for the poor little Uyghurs now, you know, they're going to turn around and be like, oh, well, oh, that's bad. The U.S. is bad for doing that. But this time it'll be different for the next regime change war, for the next conflict, for the next Cold War, etc. Because at the end of the day, these people, for claiming to be, oh, I'm ahead of the curve, I know that these wars are about resources. It's just very funny to me that these people will concern troll for human rights going on in these countries, and they're worried so much about what's going on in these other countries that they're not even concerned about the horrible, atrocious things that America does in the wake of it. Oh, this nation is committing XYZ human rights abuse, allegedly, or they're doing this allegedly, or they're a dictatorship, allegedly. We better go in and do regime change and get millions of people killed. That's the answer. But we found another great excuse for the IMF and World Bank, or Halliburton, or Big Pharma to go in and privatize everything and profit off of the collapse of a foreign economy, right? The only people that benefit from these regime change wars are not the people that these liberals love to say that they care so much about. The people that benefit from these wars are the fucking big corporations that are paying these liberals to say this bullshit in the first place, right? So just remember that for all the fucking libs and the mainstream media that are talking about how horrible, you know, North Korea is, or how horrible Gaddafi is, and all that other jazz. You know, it's kind of funny to me because also think of the arrogance of that. The arrogance of these liberals, the arrogance of these people to say, oh, you guys don't know how to run your own country. You guys don't know how to conduct things for yourselves. But we the clean first world white people do. We know better as to how you guys should conduct yourselves than you guys should, you know? So my thing is, like, what do we care whether or not a country is a dictatorship? What do we care whether or not a country decides to be socialist or decides to be a monarchy or whatnot? Why do we give an ounce of a fuck? Isn't it up to these people to decide for themselves what the best system is for them that benefits their people? And oftentimes that's what they're doing, all right? Just because a nation is a dictatorship doesn't inherently make it a terrible place to live. Like, look at Gaddafi's Libya. Gaddafi had all sorts of social programs and wealth redistribution programs. Now, I know Gaddafi wasn't, like, really a socialist. He was just a hardcore, like, socially conservative social democrat, a religious social democrat of sorts, but look what he was doing for his people. He was building canals, he was giving people free electricity and free healthcare, and he was trying to establish a reserve currency across Africa that would have given all these colonized African nations a fighting chance against the petrodollar, the EU, and the World Bank. And that's the reason why he got toppled. It's about keeping these nations down. It's about retarding their development so that we can stay top dogs. That's all it's about. And all these liberals that are concern trolling for human rights abuses are just useful idiots to the status quo. So, in summary, before we close here, I just want to finish by saying Nobody benefits from this. Nobody benefits from these wars. Nobody benefits from the regime change. No one benefits from the adventurism. We certainly don't benefit because our brother and sisters get murdered on our tax dollars. The third world doesn't benefit from it because their old leadership that actually gave something of a damn about the people ends up getting overthrown. And even if they didn't, they usually go from either an okay regime or a bad regime to a worse regime that went from serving its own interests to serving the interests of the Western colonial bloc. So hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people are going to die in the wake of that. The environment doesn't benefit because these wars are hell on our ecosystem. To this day, they're still finding dormant bombs and landmines out in fields out in Europe from World War II and Vietnam. These wars only benefit the wealthy and the powerful. They benefit the MIC, they benefit the top 10th of 1% of the population, as well as the lobbyists, the politicians, and the mainstream media. So, know who your real enemy is, people. It's not China. Your real enemy are the people up there.